Okay, my friend, you are up.
Well, thank you for joining in, everyone. It's such a pleasure to see everyone here. As Bonnie said, I'm Margot McKinnon. I live in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And what I'm going to talk to you tonight about for the next 25 minutes or so is this concept of the body, mind, spirit, soul, oneness, dominance theory. And before I put a little PowerPoint together so that I can walk you through what it is. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you how I came up with it in the first place. Many years ago, I was a high school English teacher. And they wanted me to become a principal. So I went off to get my master's degree. And I was actually doing a subject like teacher professional learning and organizational culture, which doesn't that sound very mastery? And I had to take 10 courses, and I also had to write a thesis. The very last course I took, I thought, I'm taking one course that's just for myself. And it was called Philosophy of Mind. And our prof gave us one of our most fascinating questions. I'm probably sure everybody here agrees. And the question was, how are the body, mind, spirit related? How are the body, mind, spirit related? Now, you can't know me for 5 minutes that you don't know that that's my favorite topic of all time. And just like many of you, I'm pretty sure, I was born with that being able to see spirits. And I didn't know at the time when I was a little girl that I was seeing into the future. I didn't know that until it happened many decades later. I could hear voices. When I went to sleep at night, I had really wonderful parents. My mom used to take me into my room. I was just a little girl, and she would do the whole room check. Do the spirits get in your cupboard? Do they go under your bed? Are they behind the curtain? We do a room check before bed every night. And I thought, well, it's fine now, but they come when everybody goes to sleep. And so I was a little kid who could see these faces looking at me. I didn't always know who they were or anything. And when I went to my grandmother's house, her house just always looked like a cocktail party going on. And they would turn around and look at me and not really talk to me or anything. But I would tell my grandmother about it, and she would say, oh, yeah, that one's always here. Was she wearing her blue flower dress today? Yeah, she was. Okay, well, she's always here. And I actually have my uncle who died in World War II as a soldier. He died when he was 21. He haunts the armory in Kingston, Ontario, and he's been written up in the newspaper. So it's part of our family culture. And one of the things by doing research in this area for bringing spirituality into schools is that when parents are supportive and they don't abnormalize these feelings, these experiences that we have, the child does much better in life. When they make the child feel like they're silly or that's their imagination, then the child ends up growing up in a lifelong quest trying to figure out what it was. And they have a hard time understanding whether this is real or not real. So I was very blessed to be born into a family that was very supportive. So we come now to the question. I'm sitting in my master's degree class. We're already asked, like, why are you in this class, Philosophy of Mind? Of course, I tell them, well, because it's my most fascinating question of all time. And then, so we got our homework assignment. So I went home, and I have, you all have your guides and that probably. And I have this one that comes in. My earliest recollection was when I was 4 years old, and I was putting my little doll Michael to bed, and it said right out of the darkness, "You are to be a teacher." So I did. I was a high school teacher. So I've had this voice that tells me, and if I follow that voice, life works out. And it's when I ignore it that life does not work out. So anyway, I came home from class, that master's degree class, and I cleared my space where I like to have my meditations, and I lit a candle. I got my yellow pad of paper out, and I posed it to that voice. And I said, so what's the answer? And it came in and gave me the answer in such a fresh way, I couldn't believe it. And because I was a teacher, I kept asking it questions. Well, how does it work with this kind of a student and that kind of a student and this one? And then my own children. That's why we'll understand your own families better tonight once I take you through this model. So it told me everything. And I just I was blown away. And it was this I'd never actually seen it before, but it was this massive figure in my living room telling me this. So I went back to my class the following week with my answer, and everybody else had read books. Well, it hadn't even occurred. It was a master's PhD class, and it had never even occurred to me to read a book. And they were all explaining all the books they read. And I said, oh, I didn't read any books. I had this massive figure coming in and it told me what the answer is. And I drew it out on the blackboard, and my prof said, Margot, that's the freshest theory I've heard in 50 years. Write a book. And that was about 2001. So I had to finish my master's degree. Then in 2004, I started writing the book, and I put it out in 2006, and I was just selling copies all over the place. And then I got my PhD in Oxford because I was being asked to speak all over the country, and oftentimes in front of doctors and psychiatrists. And as much as I loved being a high school English teacher, I wanted to be able to stand up and say, I'm Dr. Margot McKinnon, because it gives you a bit more credibility, because I really do want to be part of the movement that changes our education system from being a body-mind institution to one that also includes the spirit. So there's my little backstory, but I'm going to put up my screen here so that I can walk you through it. So you have something to look at here. Here we are, Spiritual Centers of America. I'm going to get up here and go view full screen, enter full screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, get ready, everybody. A fresh approach for 2024 for you and your family, because you're going to see everybody differently now. And you know what? I wish that I had known this when my children were small. I think I would have been a more effective parent. But now I hope I can be more effective parent with them now, because I know what personality type they are. But I would also, I'm finding people now saying, this helps me with my grandchildren. So let's have a look. There's the book. There's the, right here. So here's what it looks like. Now I have our faces sitting here. So I don't know whether I have to move that down here. I'll move it around as we go. So I asked the question, how are the body, mind, spirit related? And that booming voice said to me, we have 5 dimensions of self. Really? 5. Now, I'm going to say it in a different order than how it said it, but I'll explain to you why. And if I don't get to that because I got off track, remind me and ask me later. But I'm going to explain it this way. You have a body. Okay, here's mine. I can see some of yours anyway here. You have a body. You have a mind. That's your logical, rational self. It does your taxes and stuff like that. Makes your to-do list. You have a spirit. Your spirit is the part of you that came from absolute unconditional love into the body that you have, and it will go back into unconditional love. And it's down here, as we know, having a human physical experience. You have a soul. And I was sitting there going, spirit and soul? I thought they were the same thing, because people use spirit and soul like kind of as if they're synonyms. No, soul is your purpose. Why you incarnated at this time in history. Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. My spirit is me. It's my ethereal, intangible me. It's the part of me that if I were a ghost or a spirit, like my uncle at the armory, that's the part of me. Okay, I see that. My soul is my purpose. And you have oneness. That is the part of you that is connected to God, creator, universe, higher power, whatever word you use. It's also your connection to all people, place, things. It's that connection to all time is your oneness. Okay, good. Then it said, you are born dominant in one of your dimensions, and you grow the others over time. So a body dominant person loves the physical, tangible part of life. Hair, makeup, fashion, cooking, baking, beautiful decorations, making a beautiful Christmas table. Loves like decorating and really good at it. They know how to really enjoy the sensuous parts of life. And oftentimes love really group team sports, you know, like the hockey and basketball and soccer, those kinds of sports. Now, sometimes body dominants are more into the fashion, hair, and makeup. And some are more into the really hardcore Olympic athletes kind of people. And mind dominant, well, they excel at systems, organization, managing large groups of people. They end up in math, engineering, science, being the boss. They might go into medicine and the science of medicine or become a doctor. And although some doctors are soul dominant, where that they're healers, and you can tell the difference between a healer doctor and a mind dominant doctor. My dad used to volunteer at the intensive care ward when he retired, and he said when the doctor came in to talk to the families in the waiting room, he said you could really see which ones were mind dominant and which ones were soul, the healers. You know, he said you could see the difference by the way they talked to the families. But you can see mind dominant. Spirit dominant. I'm going to move our faces around here so that you can see it. Spirit dominant. Now remember that that's your ethereal part. It came from unconditional love. And it came down here to be a human being. Well, being a human being is a very complicated thing. And it's a very complicated, very mindy kind of thing that we have to do. And spirit dominants tend to struggle with being human. It doesn't necessarily come naturally to them. They remember and miss the unconditional love from the other side, the peacefulness, the total love. And they come down here and they can feel like this earth life is so harsh and abrasive and maybe even unnecessarily like systematized, where it's taking away their freedoms, you know, to just be who they are. I say our school systems are too mind dominant. Our mind dominant students who are good in the mind dominant subjects get to excel. The spirit dominant kids in my class, artists, poets, writers, they can become teachers, and the other ones where they value unconditional love. But they can be the strugglers in life as well. When I had spirit dominant kids in my class, they would come in oftentimes under a hoodie, baggy clothes. They'd come in like a ghost and go and sit somewhere away from everybody. And teachers would leave them alone because sometimes they would have a little snarly face, which basically just meant leave me alone. They wanted to stay in their spirit self. Well, I figured out how to connect with them. And because I'm a spirit dominant person, you see, spirit dominant people because this earth life is so complicated, and being around people is, they can get saturated by the human experience every day. And sometimes they just want to go home now, back to the other side. And they can, and when I first came up with this model, I showed it to my class and I said, hey guys, what do you think of this? I drew it out on the blackboard, and the body and mind kids, they could see themselves right away. Oh yeah, I'm a body dominant. And then, yeah, I'm mind dominant. And the mind dominants sometimes want it to shut down conversations about spiritual things. And I taught English lit. So we were talking about Hamlet, is to be or not to be speech, that Hamlet saw his father's ghost on the top of the castle. We would have conversations about, have you ever seen a ghost like Hamlet? Was your reaction the same as Hamlet's? That sort of thing. And because it was part of the story, and it was mandatory that they studied that particular play. So anyway, but my spirit dominant stayed behind and said, you just went into my life and showed me what's happening with me. I'm not doing well here as a human. What do I do next? Well, I know what it's not like. Okay, so I got my university degree. I had a job that was very stressy. I managed all of that. But because why? Because that voice told me you are to be a teacher. So I did it, right? I did it, but that didn't mean that I didn't, at the end, when 3:30 and that bell went, the door had to close and I just sink like, whew, like with dealing with 100 teenagers. So anyway, I wrote my first book because you know what happened? I was visiting my body dominant sister in Stowe, Vermont, and we were borrowing her friend's house. And my sister was lying on the couch under somebody else's Afghan, drinking out of somebody else's cup, eating chocolate. And she said to me, she was lying on the couch. She said, Margot, tell me about your life. What's happened this year? I am sitting on the edge of my chair wondering, how could you have somebody else's Afghan pulled up around your face? Can't you feel all the energy of all the people that Afghan's been on? So I just had this super sensitivity to my environment, super sense of smell and taste and energy and all of that. This might be relating to many of you sitting here tonight. And I've been on these podcasts, right? And they're really getting to hundreds of thousands of people. So my brother found out I was on a podcast. I don't go telling them what I'm up to. They live on the other side of the country. Anyway, watched one of the podcasts with his wife. And his wife emailed me and she said, oh yeah, he told me that you used to smell your fork when you were a little kid, when it came out of the dishwasher, because you could still smell the energy of anybody who had eaten off of that fork. But you see, I had such a great family. They'd keep my fork separate so that I got the same fork because I was so energy conscious. So anyway, my first book, when I saw my sister, I thought, oh, you know what the difference between you and me? You're at home everywhere and I'm at home nowhere. Because I always felt like a stranger here on earth. Like I was just here for a temporary visit and then I was going to go home, and I felt like a stranger here on earth. So I called my first book. So this is the first iteration of my book, and I called it The Exquisiteness of Being Human, because I realized in that moment with my sister that I said, I'm going to find the exquisiteness of my life. I have to stop feeling like a stranger. I have to make it so that earth is my home and I am at home everywhere. And I worked on that and I feel at home everywhere now. So my mission right now is to help spirit dominant people to really open up and understand how to find their own exquisiteness. And I did that with students in my classroom. And because I found out, because they felt like observers of life instead of engagers in life, that they were tremendous observers and writers. And so I managed to help them bring their marks from the bottom where they were disengaged to the top of the class in writing, because they were like, they had really keen insights about the human condition because they didn't feel like they were part of it. So they were spirit dominant. Soul dominants are, they have a strong soul purpose. They don't want to do anything other than their soul purpose. Now, I have a strong soul purpose, and because I was told it when I was 4 years old, and I stay on there. I won't do anything else that's not on my, like I couldn't, when I point over here, I have a city view of downtown Calgary where all the oil and gas towers are, because we're an oil and gas city. And I think of it as a mind dominant world over there. I couldn't work over there. My sole purpose is to be a teacher and to help people open up so that they understand the human experience better. So am I soul dominant? I would still say I'm spirit dominant because of my stress behaviors, which in my book, I'll show you what all the stress behaviors are. My stress behavior of wanting to go home, which I don't want to do anymore, by the way, folks. I need to live till I'm 150 to make up for all that time when I wanted to go home. So anyway, but I have such a strong soul purpose, and I'm using the rest of my life to go after it. Oneness dominant, they have a strong feeling of connection and belonging to all people, places, animals, time, and space. They can be change makers. I'll give you a really great definition of oneness. And it came from my 8-year-old son. He's 31 now. He fell in love with Buddha when he was 8. And we were in a museum, and he was sitting in the pose of the Buddha in this museum. And my other 2 kids were saying, do you want us to get Alex and tell him we're moving to the next? And I said, no, just leave him and let him have his experience with Buddha, and then he can catch up. Because that's what my mom would have done, right? Have your experience. And so anyway, he caught up, and I said, how was your experience with Buddha? And he said, you know, Mom, to understand something, you must become that thing. 8 years old, right? But he was also told me when he was 3 years old, I was tucking him into bed, and he said, you know, Mom, before I was born, I was talking to God. And we weren't like a religious family. They didn't go to Sunday school or anything. But he said, I was talking to God. And I said, oh, what did God say? Well, first of all, I said, like, what does God look like? God is like white. It doesn't look like anything except white, but you know it's God. And I said, oh, what did God say? God told me I had to come down and be a human. I said, really? Well, what did you say? I told him I didn't want to come. Why not? Because it's not very nice down here, Mom. And it's so nice over there. I didn't want to come down here. Oh, did you tell God that? I did. So I asked him to show me a picture of you. And he showed me like a photograph out of a picture album. And he said, oh, she looks mean. And I don't want to come down and be her son. And I said, oh, well, what did God say to that? I held all my feelings inside, everybody, just so you know. Yeah, what did God say to that? Well, God said I had to come and be your son. So I got inside your body. And then when I was born, I looked at your face and I said, oh, she's beautiful, and I'm glad she's my mom. Thing is, he was born feet first with a cord wrapped around his neck, and he was hung all the way down, and he was born dead. Black and blue, and all I could hear was, come on, baby, breathe. They were giving him CPR. Come on, they had the oxygen. Come on, baby, breathe. Come on, baby, breathe. So maybe my face didn't look so nice because I thought my baby was dead. But But he knows that story, and he says, I don't remember God, although he's had more encounters with God, but he said, I don't remember that conversation, but I remember the picture. So anyway, I thought, he's a person like, to understand something, you must become that thing. And I had a conversation with a man who researches addictions. And he said, well, the reason why I know a lot about it and why I'm fascinated is because I was an addict. And he's only in his early 30s, and he's a big researcher in the area. He said, but I don't want to tell anyone that I had addictions. And I said, but to understand something, you must become that thing. As a researcher, how could you really thoroughly understand addictions unless you've been through it? I say the same thing for people who have been through, abusive childhoods. To understand that, you must become that thing. Now you understand it. Now you have a firm grasp of what that is, so then you can move on. So anyway, the 5 dimensions has changed my life, knowing that I have them, knowing that I'm a spirit dominant person, understanding that when I have those feelings of wanting to go home now, and then confirmed with my son, who said, it's not very nice down here. Well, why does it have to be? I hear some young people saying to me, well, Margot, I don't want to bring a child into this world. And I said, well, don't bring the child into this world. Let's create a new world for all our children to live in, that's kind and loving and safe, where they can express their creativity. So let's create a new world. Let's create a new school system. Let's honor our 5 dimensions in everything that we do. So right now I'm on a big mission, everyone, because I'm doing spirit dominant leadership. If spirit dominant people understand what, to understand something, you must become that thing. If we understand what unconditional love is, if we understand peacefulness, if we understand that we're all having an human experience, then as a leader, we can look at everybody that works with us or for us, or everybody in our family, and say, we're all having an experience. How can I be a part of making us have a wonderful experience down here, a rewarding one, an exciting one, a creative one? So I'm on a big mission, and I run spirit dominant leadership webinars about how we're going to do that. We're getting quite a number of people who are really wanting to take this on board. But as far as looking at yourselves right now, you can probably recognize family members. I realized with my daughter, she's mind dominant, and I'm spirit dominant. And I used to open her up to creativity, but she wanted structure. She wanted systems and structure. And she actually told me when she was 26, I figured out why I've hated you all these years, Mom. And I said, really? I'd love to know, what is it? And she said, well, when I was 8 years old, 8 seems to be a big number. When I was 8 years old, I asked if I could help you make dinner. And you said, sure, you can. You can help cut the carrot. And I said, how do you want me to cut it? And you said, any way you want. And she said, what if I do it wrong? And you said, well, you can't do it wrong because a carrot tastes like a carrot no matter how it's cut. Well, what if I don't like it? Then try a different shape next time until you find the shape you love. She said, in my 8-year-old mind dominant systems, right, wrong, I thought, my mother doesn't love me. She won't even show me how to cut a carrot. And she said, now I'm 26 and I had a friend over and she asked me the same question. I heard myself say, oh, cut it any way you want. A carrot tastes like a carrot, no matter how it's cut. And she said, I realize now as a grown woman, you were just showing me that there are many ways to do things and to find my own way. But at the time I was mind dominant. Now, if I were raising her again and I could go back to her as an 8-year-old, I'd say, this is how you cut a carrot. This is the right way, and this is how you do it. And then the next time I might say, let's try a different way and see, but this is how we're going to do it. And that was for her to be loved. But then my other kids, they didn't want that kind of structure. So do you see how we're so different? There's my body dominant sister at home everywhere. Here I am at home nowhere. There's my daughter needing structure and systems. There's my younger boy who needs to be one with everything. It made me be a better teacher. It made me be a better mom. I'm hoping. I really want grandchildren, don't have any. I'm hoping, but it's made me be a better friend, and it's made me become a better spirit dominant leader. So I think that's enough talking for me. And here are some questions. If you're interested in questions, at the end of each chapter, I put a conversation guide so you can open it up with your family. And I got a beautiful email from a man in Norway, and he said, this has opened up my whole family. We're having conversations around your, and they're finding out that the spiritual experiences they've had and where they see themselves. There's even a kind of a quiz in here so you can see, are you body dominant? I'm happy with actually being body competent. I don't need to be dominant. I can be body competent and satisfied with that, but limited. I used to be limited, and now I've brought myself up to competent, So here's some questions I put together for us. In which dimension are you dominant, competent, or limited? How has your dominance profile impacted your career, relationships, finances, and overall well-being and joy? I find my spirit dominants tend to struggle with finances. How have other people's dominance personality impacted you? Like my daughter and I. Each dominance profile has stress behaviors. Can you figure out what they are? How could we use this model at work, as parents, as spiritually conscious beings? What would happen if we put oneness first? Oh yeah, I forgot because I got off track there. When the universe first gave me this model, it put oneness first. I told you body first. But it said in the first, when it showed me it, it said, you have oneness. You have a soul. You have a spirit. You have a mind. You have a body. But and I wrote that. I wrote it just like that in this book. And then my editor for this book said, Margot, go put body first. Because if you're trying to work with mind dominant people to change the school system, they can see, yes, I have a body. Yes, I have a mind. You can move them to spirit. You can move them to soul, and you can move them to oneness. But if you start up here, you're going to lose them right out of the gate. So I did that here. But hey, what would happen to us if we put oneness first, our connection to everything? If we put connection and belonging first? And what would spirit dominant leadership look like? And what would be the impact? And what other wonders do you have? I'm going to stop sharing so I can see your faces. Let's have a conversation. Do you have any questions? Or do you want to answer some of these questions?